Welcome to our second show. This is GGG Insights, brought to you by the East Hampton Group for Good Government. This is our second show on the Human Services Department of the town and how it provides services to senior citizens in the town of East Hampton. Our guests, again, are Kathee Burke Gonzalez, a member of the town board and the liaison to the Human Services Department, and Diane Patrizio, who is the head of that department. Diane, in our prior show, we started touching upon the panoply of services, and you really surprised us with how many different services that you're providing for seniors and also other members of the community. There was, during the break, you were discussing a referral service. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, we have case managers who will help anyone in the community that needs to access certain services. So sometimes someone might have a problem with Medicaid, Medicare, or Social Security, or even unemployment, any matter that they're having difficulty dealing with on their own. If they came in, our case manager would sit down with them and help them make phone calls and help them put together documents that are necessary to access certain services.
I have a couple of elderly parents, and I'm slowly beginning to appreciate how almost impossible it is for elderly people especially to complete all the forms and gather all the material to even apply for some of these benefits they're entitled to. Now, we also spoke in our first segment about your transportation. Actually, let me use this as a segue into the report of a committee that you folks set up in 2013, 2014 to really focus on the needs of the senior population of East Hampton. And for those of you who didn't catch our first segment, there are probably about 20% of our population is now 60 and over, and it's likely to grow. So this is a very important area for the town to really be focused on near-term, intermediate-term, and long-term. And the town board appointed a committee of senior citizens to report back to it, which they did in December of 2014. And they broke their ideas down in short-term, long-term, and intermediate-term. The first thing that they wrote, and I've got the report right here, which I'm sure is on a website someplace, is an online calendar for what's happening. Has that? Where are we on that? I know it's...
Well, that started, and then let me just say, too, we had senior citizens on the committee. We also had some organizations in the community. The East Hampton Library, Amagansett, and Montauk Libraries were there. YMCA was a part, the East Hampton Healthcare Foundation. What we wanted to do was bring together a group and to talk about senior services in the community, and also we didn't want these organizations duplicating services. So we really wanted to understand what everybody was offering for the senior community. So what we did was, if you'll recall, back in September of 2016, we launched a new website. And the new website has an online calendar on there. And we've broken it down into two phases. Right now we're in phase one, where on the calendar is really mostly human services, schedule, sanitation's on there, I'm trying to think of what
Recreation
else. Recreation is on there. And that was phase one. And in fact, our IT department is going to be meeting next week with the group that helped us get the website up and running. Phase two will then, it's a 6-month checkup, more or less. And then phase two will be, we'll be able to bring in organizations and link to other.
Oh, like the YMCA.
Like the YMCA, the libraries, Guildhall, and whatnot. So it was really a 2-step process, and we haven't gotten to phase two yet. What the committee would have wanted to see was that all of the organizations and they wanted to go to one master calendar for everything that's occurring.
That's harder than, we've tried that in other situations.
It's challenging, but we've got partners that want to work with us, and we're gonna, it'll take us time.
Let's see. Oh, well, I guess this is almost the same thing. Interagency Committee, where they wanted to avoid duplication of
Right, so
facilities.
what's happened, what we found with the Senior Services Committee, it was the first time the YMCA, the libraries, Guildhall, the Healthcare Foundation, any of the organizations in town had ever sat down and talked to each other. And we found it was so helpful to have that communication. So we established an interagency committee. We meet quarterly, and we collaborate. So, and we've really grown the list of organizations that are on there. East Hampton Clericus, you know, attends. Deborah Stein from the Jewish Center represents the Clericus. Guildhall is there. Amagansett Food Institute. We're going to ask the retreat to join that group because we've been we've had Phoenix House come to the meetings because we've collaborated. Like just this past Monday, we put on the screening of The Hunting Ground, which is a movie about documentary on sexual assault on college campuses. And we, you know, the library gave us, you know, the space. Dennis actually purchased the movie for us, Dennis Faberzak. And we screened it in the Baldwin Room in the new addition downstairs. The retreat was part of that. Family Service League, a social worker came. The town police was involved, state police. So that was something that we've done together. We did an opiate talk back in August with Phoenix House. Yes. Again, in the Baldwin Room, in the library, and we filmed that. We didn't feel comfortable filming the hunting ground because, you know, sensitive subject matter.
And safe talk
and now we're
trainings
doing
with the high school.
When you film these things, can I go on to the LTV website and see them? Is that how you do it? Okay. Do you also show them on a projector or something like that in the senior center? How does that work? I mean, you know, I know we're talking about everybody moving into the high-tech computer age, but as a reality, many of the elderly people are not used to that.
Although
they're not used to
have cell phones and smartphones, we find.
Yeah, you know, we have 4 generations in the senior center, so it starts at 60. So we have some really tech-savvy people, you know, that attend our nutrition program. There's some great activities going on there, but we do have televisions that were donated very generously, and I think one of our members was recently on a show on LTV, and she brought in the DVD, and the whole center is going to watch it. So we've done, you know, we've done things like that. I know everyone's going to want to watch this.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
But we've also collaborated.
By the way, you may want to think now about the outfit you're going to wear for the Emmys. I mean, you know, this is not something you just run into.
Exactly. But we've also collaborated, you know, the senior transportation program will bring seniors to the library. And Dennis Faberzak has offered, you know, to screen films there as well. So,
well, and the YMCA too?
Right, the YMCA as well. And the Healthcare Foundation, we found out that they have talks, and we can.
That's true.
You know, we're cross-promoting, you know, to get words out.
Well, in our prior segment, we talked about really a wonderful job that the transportation unit is doing, but you mentioned that the last bus driver finishes at 4 o'clock. And I know a lot of elderly people are really prisoners as it gets dark, especially in the winter when it gets dark early. One of the ideas that the senior committee had was to provide some kind of transportation for seniors from 4 to 8 o'clock at night. I mean, you mentioned the Clericus. I went to the Clericus Wednesday soup dinner a couple of nights ago, which was actually a lot of fun. But a number of people were saying as they were leaving that some of their friends wanted to come, but they couldn't drive at night. And this was 7 o'clock.
Right.
So I was just wondering, has there been any thought given to expanding, obviously not the full boat of all the buses running all over the town, but some kind of a service, either with the buses or taxis or something?
We could do it for special occasions, and we have done it for special occasions, but really the senior transportation program was designed for essential services. You know, and some of this is, you know, as much as we, want to provide services to our senior community, some of that is social you know what I mean? It's a social time. So, in order to make that work, you'd be taking buses off the road, because you'd have
as I'm sitting here,
scheduling.
I could sort of figure out myself that probably one of the things the clerk should do, which it can do because of its great volunteer base, is get volunteers to pick up elderly people to bring them to these once-a-month soup dinners or things like that.
Well, one of our staff members does attend the soup night, and I think a substantial amount of seniors do attend.
Oh, yeah,
they're driving themselves.
There were seniors there who were, I noticed they were pairing up, and the woman who was 85 was talking to the woman who was 65 and saying, "Oh, do you want to go now? Can we stay a little longer?" So there is that, that buddy system, really.
Right.
Which works as
but on special occasions, when we used to have, the seniors would go to the high school play, on a weekend, on a Sunday,
right.
we would, one of the drivers would volunteer to work Sunday, and we would provide the
we've had our
transportation.
Christmas party, and that would
In
be
the evening.
in the evening.
The American Legion Hall.
Yes.
Well, the other thing, for some reason, that's on this list is medical services. And I know, Kathee, could you give us an idea of what's happening with the new medical facility people were talking about to be located near Pantego Road?
So where the current Little League fields are now is where the hospital, would like to put the new freestanding emergency room. We, in fact, at the last town board work session, we had the gentleman come to talk about the traffic studies, and it came back that Pantego would be the place to do it there as well, as opposed to, we were looking at this place where CDCH is now, in the back, behind the soccer fields. And, that's, the hospital is, going through the paperwork and moving forward on that. But we're a few years out from.
Well, that brings me to another problem, which the seniors all have, and everybody in town has, and that's called affordable housing. And I know your idea, as I got from your website, and as I understand, is to have people age in place where possible in their homes, but at some point, that's not feasible. And what affordable housing is there in town for seniors? Forget their income level for the moment.
Well, there's Windmill 1,
And
Windmill 2, and St. Michael's in
Mm-hmm.
Amagansett.
And is there much of, I gather there must be a tremendous waiting list for that, though, isn't there?
I'm
Wrong
not the
person.
liaison to housing, but I would imagine there is.
Okay, we'll get Sylvia Overby to, we'll interrogate Sylvia about the affordable housing. But,
And Tom Rule.
and Tom Rule. But is, in terms of this medical facility, it occurred to me, at least, that if you're going to have people there who are working as medical technicians or doctors, they're going to run into the same old problem of where can they live. Has there been any discussion at all or thoughts about having what I'll call the second floor, which are apartments, affordable apartments? There's a guy in town who has a couple of industrial facilities, Rantani or something. He also built something, I think it's on Springs Fireplace Road, that I thought was very clever. He's got the front of his building is an office industrial facility, and the back, which has a different road, are apartments. And you couldn't tell in the front that there were apartments in the back, and you couldn't tell when you're in the back that there's a facility in the front, which is really a mixed use.
Right,
is there?
I when the hospital came to the town board work session and presented their preliminary plans, I don't believe they had any plans at that point for housing for their staff.
Now, what's happening with all the government programs? I mean, we're in a whole different environment now in terms of certainly federal funding of almost anything. What kind of federal funding does East Hampton get for these various senior I'm just going to focus on the senior programs. What's coming from the federal government to the town of East Hampton to help it defray the cost of providing these senior services?
Well, our funding channels through Suffolk County Office for the Aging. So we get funds for our nutrition program, our in-home services program. It pays for our some of the homemakers and the case manager and the residential repair worker. Also, our transportation program gets some funding from the county. The funds are county, state, and federal, so it's broken up in a certain percentage.
Yeah, I'm sure you don't know offhand.
No, but we also get funding. Did I say our nutrition program?
Yes, you did.
Yes, okay. So, and transportation, but that's where we get our funding.
Another big problem we have out here, obviously, or challenge, is that a lot of people don't speak English. I mean, I'm sure we have an elderly Latino or Spanish-speaking population. How do you handle that?
We have about, right now, I'd say 15% of our participants are minorities, which is really on the high end. You know, for the county, you're supposed to target certain minority groups, and we don't have any problem with that at all. And our Spanish-speaking case manager, plus we have quite a few Spanish-speaking members of our staff, you know, that we have quite a diverse community that attends our programs.
You mentioned your staff. Can you give me any idea of, I mean, we spent this half hour and the half hour before this describing a whole range of programs. How many people do you have? I mean,
I'm really glad you're going to let me talk about that. I wanted to. We have about 32 human services employees, and I would say all of them are really devoted to what they do. It's
very rewarding, I'm sure.
I think so. Yeah. So we're all really grateful that, you know, not only do we have the benefits that one gets from working for the government, but we get to do something that matters every day. You know, as Kathee said, we change lives. We make lives better. You know, our bus drivers can go to someone's home, and if they're not there, notify us to do a well check. People's lives have been saved that way. In our nutrition program, too, let's say someone's not feeling really well, the staff there is so in tune with everyone that comes, they can notice that maybe someone...
Mary Jane is missing.
Right, or
they're
she
not feeling well today.
hasn't touched her meal, and that's not, you know, that's unusual, so they'll pursue that.
Might contact the family. Same with our homemakers that go into the home. You know, they can notice and report back to the supervisor or the case manager that perhaps someone needs some help.
And what people don't realize is that, you know, when there's a weather event and, you know, we get the call that town hall is closed, human services employees still come to work because they're following up with, you know, the seniors and the folks on the list.
Yeah, that's all the stuff you don't see in the paper, except occasionally there's a letter of thank you, which I guess David always features prominently, which is terrific. But you read the letter of thank you before you read all the criticisms.
Right. Plus, we've opened the center, you know, for an emergency center if need be.
Does your center have generators?
Yes, we have
so it's self-sufficient for cooling and things like that? And also, in terms of government funding, is there anything that the town could do to increase? Does the town have a grant writer or something like that for this whole
We do have Nicole Facito does our grants, and the human services, out of Diane's lines, we do grants for the first time we've done Meals on Wheels. They came to us and they were had folks that were on the waiting list or folks that couldn't afford to make their, you know, donation, however it works for their meals for the day. So the town did for this 2017 budget, $10,000 grant for Meals on Wheels.
But you've said something that I never understood before. And Diane, you're probably really familiar with the nuts and bolts. I thought anybody who couldn't get out just called a number called Meals on Wheels, whatever it is, and all of a sudden food starts appearing. Is that? I'm obviously paring down the complexity of this, but if I need Meals on Wheels, do I have to pay for it? And how does that work?
Yeah, Meals on Wheels does have a fee, but what Kathee was saying is this year the town is granting them, you know, $10,000 to help underwrite their costs.
And what are the programs which are directly or indirectly supported by you have people paying a fee, to the extent they can. I'm sure there are basically scholarships of some kind for people who can't afford even a small fee to the Meals on Wheels people.
Well, there's Project Most, which has the after-school programs, and I know that they have a very generous scholarship program, but the town does provide them with grant funds.
I think that's about 35,000.
Right? And we have Family Service League, which we partner with very closely because they provide the mental health counseling for people in the community. That
So Family Service League actually gets 2 grants. One is through the town for $50,000, and that serves about 400 community members a year. And then a few years back, after Adam Fine, the principal at East Hampton High School, and Ralph Naglieri sounded the alarm about what was happening with young people at the high school that were having mental health issues and getting them to Stony Brook or whatnot. The town and the school districts and Senator Laval and Assemblyman Thiel in the Southampton Hospital put together the South Fork Mental Health Initiative, which was just targeted at adolescents. So that also serves about 175 young people a year, and the town gives $27,500 to that program. We also give $50,000 to Phoenix House, which operates an outpatient program on Springs Fireplace Road in the same area as where One Stop is. So we've got a number of programs that the town supports. Here, the Retreat is another not-for-profit that gets support from the town.
Well, Diana, as we're sitting here, I'm thinking of the fact that we're defining seniors as people 60 and above, and certainly the people who are 60, 65, 70 are pretty mobile and pretty self-sufficient. And have you put out the call for volunteers targeting that group? I'll call them the retired people who have extra time. Is there any way that you have been able to, I know there's some insurance issues and probably some labor issues and so forth, but have you been able to integrate volunteers? Have you been able to attract volunteers to help you essentially make the dollars go further?
Well, we use volunteers in our adult daycare program. We have volunteers that come and provide singing. We actually have a volunteer in our adult daycare program that assists us on a daily basis. Years ago, his wife was a member of the program, and now he comes just to help out. The same in the nutrition program. Our volunteers are really important. They check people in the morning. They help serve the meals.
I was going to ask about that.
Yes.
You know, you're trying to serve 60 people.
Yeah, and also we have a site council, which is made up of volunteers in our program, and they plan special events. They do fundraising, and today they bought the birthday cake for the March babies. So they're very involved and help us plan other special events. Like we just recently did a Day of Beauty where we took some seniors to Riverhead to a beauty school that they have there. So volunteers are very important, but we can always use more, which is why we need more room.
And we need a new center.
Yes, yeah.
Well, Diane, let's just focus on one thing that I know was in the report of the senior committee, and that is the time slot from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock at night in the winter when it's hard for them to drive. I don't expect you to give me a full-blown answer because there are so many legal and other ramifications, but why couldn't the town, through your department, try to set up a volunteer program to coordinate people who are willing to drive, elderly people who can't drive, and provide that kind of a service, not as a paid expense, although maybe there is some small expense. Is that possible to fill the void with volunteers?
I think our town attorney's office would say there was a liability issue there. I know in Montauk that they do that through one of the churches, I believe, has a list and matches up
Oh, okay.
volunteer drivers with seniors or folks that need to get out and can get around and go to different events.
Yeah, it just seemed to me that a lot of this stuff, especially now with the advent of computers, it's pretty easy to, I mean, I don't want to take away
There's an app
Uber's,
for that.
oh, I don't want to take away Uber's job here, but it would seem to me that logically you could have some kind of an app which will match easily people who need rides with, and maybe it's through the clericus or one of the other organizations rather than the town, but this seems to be one of the holes that the senior report left us with that we haven't really been able to fill yet.
And it's something we could bring to our interagency committee and see how we could.
Because I can imagine there are insurance problems if the town gets involved, but probably even insurance problems if the clericus gets involved. And, I guess it would be like really an Uber app, because if Arthur Melman was your driver and you didn't like the way Arthur Melman was running the stoplights, you'd put a little X next to him, and you know, only those who want to live a very short time will drive with Arthur. But are there any other things like this where you could make use of volunteer? I have this focus. One of the things that my daughter did was work on President Bush's faith-based initiative. She's a New York City liberal who was thrown into that and thought it was absurd until she realized that churches and synagogues have physical facilities and have cadres of people who want to help. And are there other ways of getting volunteers more involved with your services, which are human services ultimately?
Well, I just attended a meeting with the clericus where they were talking about Maureen's Haven and the homeless issue here. So I think the clericus and the faith-based organizations do a lot in the community. It might be similar to what you're saying about human services. You know, we do a lot, but not everyone knows what we do. As far as more help in volunteer help with what we do, we would appreciate it, but it would be for new programs, and again, I don't really have room right now.
Diane, that's great, because we've also run out of room for our time slot here, and I want to thank you both, Kathee and Diane, for being with us, and hopefully we'll follow this up with some volunteers for you.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
Thanks again.
Thanks.
Thank you all for joining us.